Metro Last Light is a first-person shooter with horror elements. It's a sequel to Metro 2033 and follows Artyom, who's caught in a plot between the factions of the Metro and the last surviving Dark One. This is the original version of the game, and it's available on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC if you can find a copy. Atmosphere. Immediately, the game has a much higher focus on combat and storytelling than its predecessor, but the game still uses the same survival elements, though some things are considerably easier thanks to the better shooting mechanics and less brutal combat on the normal difficulty. It allows for deeper immersion. The game still has an incredible atmosphere that lies just underneath, with the dark, dank tunnels of the Metro being just as foreboding, lonely, and hostile as before. The addition of the spider webs and larger ecosystem in the Metro leads to more tense encounters with the wildlife, and the surface feels even less hospitable with poisonous swamps and strange creatures roaming around, and time and care has been put into these environments to make them feel bigger and more alive, and in some cases, darker and more dead. The Metro tunnels themselves still steal the show, peppered with the corpses of people roughing it on fateful journeys brought to an end too soon, and it's harrowing looking at the amount of death present in the game.
All clear. Move out.
There's a lot of dread and apprehension when you explore tunnels on your own, but the biggest issue the game has is that it rarely leaves you alone for long to take in the crushing isolation and creepiness the atmosphere has, with the early game filled with daring adventures with Pavel, and the later game going harder into the combat elements.
Let's move. Stay out of the light and stick to the shadows. They are your best friend.
You can still feel the atmosphere underneath these sections, but it's pushed to the back. The game also has a lot of breaks when you reach a major location and encounter a bustling marketplace or story section. It lets you sit and watch a show and engage in a lot of side activities that, for a while, make you forget that you're playing a horror game. Though there's something to be said about the juxtaposition, where feet away from the liveliness of the markets and towns, there's rotting corpses on the other side of the walls. The game has an incredible atmosphere, when you're allowed to enjoy it. That's one Harry Mason.
Spare the children, please! Mom,
Scares. Last Light has very few truly frightening moments, with it preferring combat over all else. And whilst the combat can be pretty stressful in certain instances, especially with stealth usually being an option too, even at its most intense, when you're fighting a hopeless war against the mutants due to sheer volume of them, the combat doesn't ever really break into being frightening. There are chase sequences, which were exciting but not frightening, and even parts like the City of Ghosts where it felt like the game was really trying. It was just creepy at best. The game does have one or two moments when you're alone with the car where it goes above and beyond, creating some really unsettling and frightening scripted events, but sadly, the rest of the game doesn't put in the same effort. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. Last Light's soundtrack is a wonderful selection of string-based combat pieces and metallic ambiance that goes all the way down into the truly haunting, with echoes and swells of static, unnerving buzzing sounds and high-pitched shimmering that brings to life the cold alien sounds of a haunted metro, slipping into your mind and chilling you with its electric feel. Again, when the game wants to be creepy, it goes above and beyond. The stealth pieces can be pretty intense, but the rest of the soundtrack is overwhelmingly combat music and sorrowfully sad pieces. The game is littered with random sound effects that play in certain areas, with bug screeches reverberating down the metro tunnels or the sound of something jumping into one of the surface's swamps. The guns sound punchy, and even the sound of shell casings hitting the ground is satisfying to hear. The game does reuse several sound effects from the first game, but the vast majority of them still sound great. It's all done really well. They enhance not just the combat, but the quiet moments in bug nests with the sounds of pods rumbling and gurgling before something jumps out of them. Again, time and care has been put into this.
In the past, trains were ordinary things, but now, this monorail seems magic, doesn't it? Our kids won't know how to operate these things, and their kids will probably think this was built by the gods.
The voice acting is really great, especially Pavel, and there's tons of voices talking and making things more immersive in marketplaces and high population areas, and the reverb and directional audio make everything sound perfectly immersive. The sound design sounds great, and the game sounds incredible. That's two Harry Masons. Gore. Last Light is not just gory, but deeply unsettling, with the sheer amount of death presented to the player. The unbearably grim and bleak post-apocalypse is unveiled in the frankly horrifying number of corpses found everywhere in the game. Mangled soldiers that died trying to enter vents, civilians dead in their airplane seats, and even refugees that were killed waiting for a door to open to the metro.
Alright, the map shows a collector entry point ahead.
Looting corpses forces you to look at them, and the animation where they turn over often reveals more gross out moments where you find these rotting corpses are even more decomposed underneath. The spiders again create more disgusting moments where you find remains filled with them, or hundreds of them swarming over a single body. The gunfights lead to a lot of blood and guts, with blood from your enemies spraying over your gas mask and face, with a dedicated button added to the game where you can wipe fluids from it so that you can see. The gore is grim, it's nasty, and it literally leaps out at you. That's 3 Harry Masons.
Alright, Artyom. And you, Guy. You have something to report?
Yes, Colonel.
Let's keep it short then.
I located the surviving Dark One at the gardens.
What? One of those things is still alive?
Luckily, yes.
Luckily? Come, this is utter madness. The Dark Ones were the greatest threat the Order's ever faced.
Story. The story continues on from the events of Metro 2033, with Artyom being paid a visit by Khan, who tells him of a remaining Dark One, a race thought made extinct in the previous game. The story then sees Artyom captured by the Nazis whilst hunting down the Dark One, and he uncovers a faction war brewing in the Metro tunnels as he escapes their clutches. The game's story has its highs and lows, with the early chapters feeling more like a grand wartime adventure in a spooky place, with the daring heroes Pavel and Artyom breaking out of a nightmarish prison, and the story keeps going quite well, with enough plot twists to make the plot compelling for at least half its duration. The building war in the Metro has a lot of internal politics that was initially uninteresting but became more engrossing as time went on. But the later game felt padded with some incredibly slow chapters before ramping up again just before the end. There are lots of rushed character developments, especially the romance between Artyom and Anna, and some characters have changed dramatically since the previous game, with Khan seeming less stoic and wise and more pretentious thanks to his dialogue.
The tombs of ancient kings were filled with whatever they might need in the afterlife. Weapons, gold, chariots. They'd sacrifice their wives and slaves to serve their lords even in death. Reminds me of this bunker.
Cut that shit out.
He seems to know everything and he is always right. There's some diary entries you can find throughout the game, and some of them are pretty harrowing, but many of them are about the growing conflict in the tunnels below Russia. The story starts off really good, but has a lot of weak moments or times where it just didn't engage very much at all. Making the final scores 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Whilst I enjoyed Metro Last Light, its horror elements were really pushed quite hard to the side in favour of more action and storytelling, even if some of the more story-based chapters felt a bit tedious nearer to the end. The atmosphere is still seriously impressive, again, when the game lets you enjoy it. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion of horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I made sure I had gas mask filters, I did not join the bodies in the Metro, and advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Don't also go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.